And the marketplace, quite frankly, was a scene that's hard to describe. There were dead people in all sort of contorted positions in the marketplace on the cobblestones. And we were made to sit one line behind the other, waiting for more people to be brought, to be shipped to Treblinka. And I'm crying. And I'm so scared, and I'm praying to God. And I asked my dad, what should I do? What should I do? And he told me to run. And I managed to crawl behind the people sitting in that marketplace and crawl into the sewer that ran along the marketplace, the street, and kept crawling till I felt I was out of sight. Stood up and started running, and ultimately escaped from the ghetto.
His older sister, Irene, was already at the Gorski's home being hidden.
Which was a Polish family.
Polish family local. Good customers of my grandparents' butcher shop. And so he makes it out to the field, and he stands up, and there's no shooting, there's no yelling, there's nothing, and he just runs to the barbed wire fence where he sees this older woman screaming to run, to come here. She helps, lifts up the barbed wire fence, and he crawls underneath. And then from there, his story continues with a couple weeks in the forest, in the woods, foraging, looking for food, and so on.
But in the square, that's the last time he saw his dad, your grandfather, and little Sarah, who was, 4, 5, 6 years old?
I think she was 5.
Yeah.
I think she was about 5 years old.
And there really isn't any knowledge of exactly what happened to her and to your grandfather, other than you think it was Treblinka.
So we have had this question and this conversation before, my father and I, at a dinner table. And he made it clear to me, she is gone. How he knows, what he knows, he's never talked about it. And so I respect that and know that my younger aunt was no longer with us. Dad came back after a couple weeks of running around and trying to eat and so on. He went back to town and he found his mom. And she pleaded with him, here's some jewelry, you need to go to the Gorskis and ask them to hide you as well. Crying, emotional, getting abandoned by his mom, he finally went with the jewelry.
How hard that must have been, because he felt like it was her abandoning him.
Yes.
Soldier. A young woman who reminded Jimmy of the corpses he'd seen at Juno Beach. Pale, sunken cheeked, dead-eyed. They sat. They spoke. Jimmy told her that life was a precious gift. He told her to treasure every moment, even the unhappy ones. He told her to master a useful skill and to keep herself busy. Then, over at the convention center, he introduced Sarah to a few of the men and women he had served with, including his former captain and a few other patriots who had distinguished themselves in combat. Sarah seemed to enjoy them, so he invited her to Indianapolis, where they were all scheduled to appear at a similar event 2 weeks later. To Jimmy's surprise, Sarah showed up again. They talked some more, and Jimmy saw improvement, so he invited her to join him in Boston, then Phoenix, then Seattle. After Seattle, it was Dallas, Madison, and Baltimore. Ultimately, the girl who wanted Jimmy's voice to be the last thing she ever heard came to hear him speak on 18 separate occasions before she stopped showing up. Jimmy never saw her again and assumed the troubled young woman had lost her fight with depression. 8 years later, though, an envelope arrived at his home in Canada. An envelope with no return address. But this time, the writing was familiar. Dear Jimmy, I want to thank you for saving my life. I got my master's today. I'm an electrical engineer, thanks to you. I'm also married with a 2-year-old son. I'm healthy, Jim, and happy, and I owe you a debt I can never hope to repay. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Sarah. The closing read, sincerely, and Jimmy was pretty sure she was. Many years later, when asked to describe the proudest moment of his career, Jimmy didn't mention his professional awards or his many military honors, nor did he mention the TV show that made him famous. Instead, Jimmy recalled the suicidal woman who found salvation at a series of conventions. Conventions where thousands of people lined up to thank him for his service, along with a handful of other men and women who had worn the same uniform once upon a time. Not the uniform he wore in the Second World War. No, I'm talking about the uniform he wore for 3 seasons on the TV show where he boldly went, where no Canadian with a Scottish accent had gone before. It's true. The man who became synonymous with the command, "Beam up," was the same man who transported a deeply depressed Trekkie out of a dark and deadly depression. Not with science fiction, but with kindness. Such were the proudest moments of an actor called Jimmy Doohan, the man who kept the USS Enterprise firing on all cylinders with his portrayal of Montgomery Scott, the chief engineer you might remember as Scotty. Anyway, that's the way I heard it. Let's go.
Yeah, that's a good one. My right eye is leaking the whole time I'm sitting here. When the facts that we kind of found with this story, you know, he died in 2005. Some of his ashes were sent where no Canadian had gone before, maybe 70 miles above the earth on a private X rocket, you know, as a tribute to his lasting influence on a generation of engineers. So who of us don't know the term "beam me up, Scotty," and the rogue or the brogue in which he would say something about, "I've given it all I got, Captain." For him to be the subject of this story is just phenomenal.
Well, it was the greatest disappointment in recording it because I realized, you know, I couldn't talk in a Scottish accent without giving the thing away. But that's the first thing what's it going to be, Sarah? You know, you gotta throw yourself off a bridge. You know, but yeah, you know, these cultural touchstones, "Beam me up, Scotty," "Boldly go." It just proves the thing that we've said before on this show, which is the story and culture. It's at the very top. It's upstream of politics and journalism and media and everything.
Okay, you wrote this and you found this story. Did you embellish it in any way? I mean, was his level of tough love, was it that extreme when he talked to her?
I don't know. What I read were direct quotes from him saying,
which prompted him to head down to the local radio station and do a recording on his own, launching his